I'm also very sorry to report this man, whom we had placed considerable trust, Michael Donovan of the United States.
You remember the lizards, the red uniforms, that terrifying moment someone ripped off their human face. But what you don't know is how close V came to being shut down before it ever aired. Behind the sci-fi effects and reptilian shocks were real mice, network censorship, and makeup so intense it nearly blinded cast members. These are 15 weird, wild, and shocking facts about V. And wait until the end, because the bonus fact reveals how a single letter changed everything about the show's legacy. Number 1. The visitors wore red and black. They used propaganda posters. They slowly infiltrated human institutions while smiling on television. It wasn't subtle, and it wasn't supposed to be. V was never just an alien invasion story. Creator Kenneth Johnson designed it as a direct allegory for the rise of fascism. He was inspired by Sinclair Lewis's novel It Can't Happen Here, a cautionary tale about America slipping into dictatorship. The parallels were everywhere. Youth programs, collaborators, resistance cells. But NBC executives got nervous. They wanted the politics toned down, the Nazi imagery scrubbed, the message softened. Johnson refused. He held the line. And somehow, the show made it to air with the allegory intact, complete with a spray-painted red V, echoing Churchill's "Well to Victory" symbol. In a decade dominated by popcorn action, V forced America to ask, what would it look like if the monsters didn't come from space, but from inside our own system? Number 2. When creator Kenneth Johnson first pitched V, it was a political thriller rooted in resistance and fear. But once NBC greenlit the project, they had other ideas. Executives didn't want a dark allegory about fascism. They wanted romance, glamour, soap opera drama in space. They pressured Johnson to rewrite the show with more love triangles, glossier characters, and less politics. But Johnson pushed back. He refused to compromise the core message. Eventually, a compromise was struck. Johnson kept the heart of the story, but network notes lingered in every episode. Later, spin-offs leaned more into melodrama, and Johnson walked away completely. The show survived. But the fight behind the scenes proved that even in science fiction, the real villains might be wearing suits and ties. Number 3. It's one of the most shocking scenes in TV history. Diana, the cold-blooded alien commander, tilts her head back and swallows a live mouse whole. But here's the part most viewers never knew. Jane Badler really held that mouse in her mouth. There was no CGI, no animatronics, just a terrified actress, a real rodent, and one camera take. Badler was terrified of mice, but she wanted to sell the moment. So the director handed her a live mouse and said, just hold it there and don't move. They used sleight of hand and camera angles to make it look like she swallowed it. But that raw panic on her face, that wasn't acting. It was survival, and the moment became iconic. Not just for shock value, but because it showed just how far V was willing to go to unsettle you. Number 4. The visitors' human skin might have looked smooth on screen, but underneath, they were monsters, and those monsters needed to look real. So the makeup team went straight to the source, the side of the road. They collected photos of actual reptile roadkill, studied alligator carcasses, and examined decaying scales to create something that felt biologically plausible and deeply disturbing. Then came the practical effects. Layers of latex, hand-painted scales, mechanical jaws. The full skin-peeling transformation scenes took over 6 hours to complete, and sometimes left actors with rashes, bruising, or chemical burns. But the result, some of the most memorable sci-fi body horror ever seen on television. Because when the mask finally came off, V made sure you couldn't look away. Number 5. Those unblinking reptilian eyes made the visitors terrifying, but they came with a painful price. To achieve that cold, inhuman look, actors wore full sclera contact lenses, giant pieces of colored plastic that covered the entire eye. They were thick, inflexible, and nearly impossible to see through. Some actors experienced eye pain, blurred vision, and intense dryness after just a few minutes. Others suffered corneal scratches and had to be pulled from filming. In the 80s, contact lens technology wasn't what it is today. There were no digital touch-ups or CGI tricks. If you wanted alien eyes, you wore the pain. And the cast did, scene after scene, shot after shot, blinking through tears to make sure the audience saw monsters staring back. Hey, if these behind-the-scenes stories are already blowing your mind, just wait. It only gets stranger from here. If you're enjoying the video so far, go ahead and hit like and subscribe for more wild TV history just like this. Because the next few facts, they're the kind that nearly got V pulled off the air.
Otherwise, I'll just have to turn her whole damn family in.
Number 6. It was one of the most infamous moments in sci-fi history. Robin Maxwell, impregnated by a visitor, goes into labor. But what she gives birth to is not human. First, a seemingly normal baby. Then, a second child, green-skinned, with a forked tongue and reptilian eyes. NBC executives were horrified. The original footage was so graphic, they debated cutting the entire sequence. Test screenings caused walkouts. Some censors called it inappropriate for television, but Johnson refused to let it go. He trimmed some visuals, reshot a few angles, and held his ground. The scene aired barely and became one of the most talked about moments of the decade. Even now, fans still remember where they were the first time they saw it, because nothing said V like the birth of something completely alien. Number 7. While V pushed boundaries, NBC still had limits. Several scenes were cut or heavily edited before broadcast, especially those showing the visitors using force against humans. Executives worried the violence was too realistic, that it hit a little too close to history. One scene showed scientists being dragged from their homes. Another depicted resistance members being publicly executed. Both were removed entirely before the miniseries aired. Kenneth Johnson later said those cuts were a battle he lost, but not without a fight. Even in science fiction, the truth can get too uncomfortable, and V proved that when fiction starts to mirror reality, studios get nervous. Number 8. Peeling back human skin to reveal a lizard face might have taken seconds on screen, but behind the scenes it was a grueling, day-long process. Each transformation effect required hours of prosthetics, paint, glue, and mechanical rigging. The actors sat motionless as teams applied layer after layer, sometimes starting at 3 a.m. for a scene shot that afternoon. The worst part? Once it was on, it had to stay on. Some actors went entire days without eating solid food or taking full breaks just to keep the effect intact. It was sweaty, it was suffocating, but it worked. The final result was terrifying, unforgettable, and decades later still holds up better than most CGI, because nothing sells horror like the weight of real rubber and glue. Number 9. What started as a bold miniseries quickly turned into a financial black hole. Originally budgeted at around $9 million, V blew past that halfway through production. The cost of miniatures, prosthetics, stunts, and optical effects skyrocketed. At one point, just one scene's laser blast sequence cost over $10,000 for a single effect. NBC executives panicked. Corners were cut. Scenes were recycled. Even the musical score had to be reused in later episodes. Director Kenneth Johnson fought to preserve quality, but by the end, the show had burned through more than $13 million, making it one of the most expensive TV miniseries of its time. The visitors weren't the only thing eating resources. The show's budget devoured itself. Number 10. Today, Mark Singer is remembered as the face of the resistance, but just days before filming, the network nearly replaced him. NBC executives thought Singer was too intense, too rugged, not TV handsome enough. They lobbied for a more traditionally polished actor, a bigger name, a safer face. But Kenneth Johnson fought back. He believed Singer brought something real, something grounded, the kind of tough but thoughtful energy the character needed to lead a believable rebellion. The gamble paid off. Singer became the anchor of the series, balancing action with heart. And once the cameras rolled, even the execs who doubted him knew they'd just found their freedom fighter. Number 11. The rebels in V weren't just sci-fi heroes, they were based on history. Kenneth Johnson designed the resistance to echo real-life underground movements like the French resistance and Jewish partisans who fought against Nazi oppression. Everything from their homemade explosives to coded communications came from actual wartime tactics. Even the spray-painted red V was lifted straight from Winston Churchill's V for Victory campaign during World War II. This wasn't just a story about aliens. It was a warning, wrapped in fiction, about how tyranny takes hold and how ordinary people rise up to stop it. And for viewers who recognize the parallels, it hit especially hard. Number 12. To market V, NBC borrowed from the show's own storyline. They launched a real-world campaign where subway posters featured a calm, smiling visitor with the phrase, "The visitors are your friends." It mirrored the in-universe propaganda exactly. Creepy, clean, and unsettling. At first, people didn't even realize it was a TV ad. Some thought it was political. Others thought it was some kind of psychological experiment. It was the perfect marketing stunt. Because what better way to promote a show about hidden fascism than by making your audience feel like they're already living it? Number 13. You might remember Frank Ashmore as Martin, the rare visitor with a conscience, but off camera, he nearly became the show's most tragic story. During one effects-heavy scene, Ashmore was rigged into a harness for a high fall, but the safety setup wasn't secure. Midway through the stunt, something slipped, and Ashmore began to drop. Crew members lunged to grab him just in time, stopping him inches from a hard landing. The scene was reshot. The stunt was rewritten, but Ashmore never forgot how close he came to serious injury, or worse. Because on V, even the good guys weren't safe, not on screen and not off. Number 14. Dominique Dunne was originally cast as Robin Maxwell, the young woman who would later give birth to the first human visitor hybrid. But tragically, she never made it to set. Just weeks before filming began, Dunne was murdered by her ex-boyfriend in a horrific case of domestic violence. The incident shocked Hollywood and devastated the V production team. Producers recast the role with Blair Tefkin and moved forward, but the shadow of Dunne's death lingered. Her name remained in the early call sheets. Her loss became a quiet wound carried by the cast and crew. The series went on to make sci-fi history, but behind the scenes, V began in mourning, reminding everyone that while the show was fiction, real tragedy was never far away. Number 15. It might sound unbelievable, but V wasn't just watched, it was studied. In the mid to late 80s, high school teachers began using clips from V to teach students about authoritarianism, propaganda, and resistance psychology. The visitor takeover, through media control, loyalty programs, and fear tactics, mirrored real historical regimes. One scene showing a seemingly kind visitor spreading misinformation was used to explain how propaganda normalizes oppression. For a primetime sci-fi series to become a classroom tool, that's rare. But V didn't just entertain, it warned, and some educators saw it as the perfect modern myth to make students think twice about who they trust and why. Bonus fact: before it became V, the series had a different name, The Visitors. Straightforward, obvious, and according to NBC execs, forgettable. In a last-minute branding decision, one executive suggested shortening the title to just V, referencing both Visitors and the iconic Woe to Resistance symbol. It was punchy, mysterious, bold. The show's logo changed. The ad campaign shifted. Suddenly, V wasn't just a sci-fi story, it was a symbol. And that last-minute decision gave the series a legacy far bigger than anyone expected. V wasn't just another alien invasion story. It was a warning, a metaphor, and a battleground behind the scenes, filled with censorship, fear, risk, and moments of pure brilliance. If you saw this show in a whole new light today, go ahead and like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments which fact shocked you the most. Thanks for watching, and remember, the truth is the greatest enemy of the state.